share my observations, and I've only been here today. And, you know, I've talked to others who were participating yesterday, and they just told me that it has been a fabulous 2 days. And I really take my hat off to Alex and Clyde Sakamoto, the Chancellor for Maui Community College, putting this together and sponsoring this. Of course, the Sustainable Living Institute of Maui. It was 2 years ago that I was actually asked to participate in I think it was called Islands of the World Sustainability Conference here on the MCC campus as well. And so there's a strong tradition, I think, of talking about this issue here on Maui, and that really it warmed my heart to see all of you here this late on a Sunday night. You know, this was done for my colleagues. Never mind. Okay. So what are the next steps? You know, I think what intrigues me the most, I think, is, you know, thanks to Manfred's presentation on what the situation looks like locally for oil. I mean, that's startling. That is just the biggest wake-up call in the world. And, you know, I think we need to do something soon. And even if it's just the idea of conceptualizing how we're going to address this issue, I think is going to be a very, very important step. And you all are doing that now amongst yourselves. I thought Craig's presentation on food security was also very key, because it talked from a very specific tropical island perspective. And we're going to need to adapt to those kinds of techniques and cultivation practices to make it go here too. And what was interesting to me about Craig's presentation is it seemed to deal not necessarily only with the commercial or industrial aspects of agriculture, but it really got down to like a subsistence level. And we need to return to that kind of perspective, I think, in terms of growing our own food. It's not necessarily where we're going to make money from it, but it's going to be more along the lines of how do we as individuals and as families measure up in terms of producing our own food. So, in all of the discussions today, and I thought the panel discussions were really excellent throughout the day too, it seems to me that there was a focus on how do we get involved. And I think James Mashiba, who was here earlier from Hawaii, mentioned this whole concept of the commitments that we can make as individuals. And what's important about that is, even if we make them as individuals or as family units, what does a cumulative or aggregate amount come to mean? Because sometimes in our own lives, we can do this because we know it's the right thing to do. But do we really know what the impact is on our community, on our island, on our state? And I think those are very important factors that we need to keep in mind. But as individuals and as families, we need to make that level of commitment and make that kind of thing. Our islands, to me, are all individual communities, and at all different levels of development and sophistication. Again, through my work with the Hawaii 2050 Sustainability Task Force, we were able to go to every island. And I will share with you that islands like Lanai and Molokai, to me, have the greatest opportunity to become very, very self-sufficient, because the population is smaller, because they are not that far from the formal practices of fending for themselves. So I think there's great potential here. It's those urban centers where the population now has become so much more dense that's going to take a little bit more work. But I think it's all achievable, if we all put our hearts and minds to it. So we have the individual and the family level, we have the island community level, and I'm a strong believer, though, in that we cannot just be separate unto ourselves as islands. We must still consider ourselves as the archipelago, as the unit of a state, if you want to call it that. But we're all in this together, and we need to help each other as we move forward. And I think that has great ramifications for ourselves as role models in the rural communities as well. So what are we to do then as individuals and as communities? I want to really emphasize what I think is important in terms of decisions now cannot just be made for the bottom line of profit. Obviously, that is not going to just sustain us in the future. So we really need to consider our economy, having a healthy economy. Certainly that's important. But we also need to have a very healthy community. We need to be concerned about all of the members of our community, including the homeless, including those who are not as fortunate as many. And so let's not lose sight of those in need in our community. We need to do this as a community. And lastly, I think it's the environment. And, you know, that's such an important factor for all of us. Not just from the sense of this is a beautiful place and it's an ecosystem that is unique in the world, but the fact, and I think as was pointed out by many who talked about the cultural perspective, is that you are absolutely connected to this ecosystem. And once we all understand that connectivity, then we will all treat that with the due respect, and in fact we will treat each other with that due respect. So please keep in mind this concept of the triple bottom line in your decision making as individuals and as community groups and organizations. One of the tasks that I want to take on myself actually is to somehow look to creating an inventory or a matrix of all the different efforts that are being conducted throughout the state and make that available to everyone. Because I think what that will do is that will indicate what kind of critical mass has already been established with respect to sustainability practices and programs. And that will also, I think, imbue people on Lanai with the self-assurance and with the exhilaration that the people on Hawaii experience, or in Ka'u, or here, or in Hana. You know, so these are all very, very important concepts that I think link us, and we need to create that kind of linkage so that we can understand and support each other throughout the state in this effort. This thing is not going to go away. You guys know that. I certainly don't have to tell you that. This is only the beginning, to me, of this journey where we return to our roots, where we return to the way of being much more self-sufficient in everything that we do. And in that regard, that we're going to take care of each other and really create the Hawaii that we all want to see down the road. So I want to thank you all for allowing me to be a part of this. I'm quite exhilarated by all the information that was shared today, the level of enthusiasm by all of you. And you know, that's only going to spur me on to, again, try to figure out a way that we can create a statewide network that will in fact then inspire all